I usually avoid getting involved in debates like this, but when it comes to Caitlin Clark, staying quiet is no longer an option. When a true legend speaks, the entire basketball world pauses to listen. This time, Michael Jordan wasn't looking back on his own iconic career. Instead, he shifted the focus to Caitlin Clark, the fast-rising force who is reshaping women's basketball every time she steps on the floor. In a moment that stunned everyone in attendance and visibly moved Clark, Jordan delivered a tribute so powerful it echoed far beyond the arena. What did he say that instantly electrified the crowd? Get ready, because this chapter in the rise of Caitlin Clark is one you can't afford to miss. Michael Jordan and the rise of Caitlin Clark is not an ordinary story. When Jordan steps into the public conversation, especially regarding players outside the NBA, it's never random. It's deliberate. And when that rare attention is directed at a WNBA rookie, the sports world takes notice. For years, Jordan has largely stayed silent on the women's game, choosing instead to support from behind the scenes while expanding his influence through ownership, branding, and global business ventures. So when he finally speaks, particularly about a talent like Clark, it's more than simple admiration. It signals a fundamental shift in how greatness is recognized. Caitlin Clark isn't just piling up statistics. She's completely redefining the WNBA's visibility. Her presence has sparked historic attendance numbers and shattered television rating records. With the Indiana Fever, matchups that once drew little attention have turned into sold-out arenas, with over 1 million viewers tuning in on a regular basis. But her impact goes far beyond viewership numbers. It's seen in the aftershocks. In cities where her games air consistently, youth basketball programs are surging, camps are overflowing, and young girls are picking up basketballs not just to play, but to be noticed, to have a voice. That kind of cultural influence mirrors what Jordan accomplished on the men's side decades ago. In the 1990s, he didn't simply dominate games. He transformed what a basketball player could represent worldwide. Now, as the Jordan brand quietly expands its partnerships with WNBA stars, a new chapter is being added to that legacy. The business empire Jordan built is evolving, aligning itself with the growing commercial power and cultural importance of elite women athletes. The question is no longer whether women's basketball holds market value. The real question is how rapidly that value is rising, and Caitlin Clark stands at the center of that momentum. That's why Jordan's public recognition of Clark carries so much weight. It's never accidental. His rare words don't just offer approval. They command attention from fans, executives, and sponsors alike. His influence is unmatched, and when he highlights someone, the sports world can't ignore it. It's a form of legacy transfer, something deeper than an endorsement, yet different from mentorship. Social media has only intensified that connection. Today, recognition doesn't rely solely on award ceremonies or televised interviews. Platforms like Instagram and TikTok allow legends and rising stars to interact instantly, creating narratives that cross leagues and break gender barriers. That's the environment where Jordan's acknowledgement of Clark exploded, not quietly, but as a defining viral moment. Brands quickly followed. Campaigns featuring both male and female athletes aren't just about reach anymore, they're about alignment. They allow fans to imagine basketball greatness without boundaries. As more companies buy into this vision, icons of the past and stars of the future are sharing the spotlight. Those moments create intersections where someone like Michael Jordan can validate a force like Caitlin Clark without needing many words at all. And just when it seemed Jordan's praise stood alone, why did Larry Bird and Shaquille O'Neal suddenly add their voices with unexpected admiration?
Stay tuned.
Larry Bird and Shaq. When legends can't ignore Caitlin Clark, even someone as reserved as Larry Bird, never known for flashy statements or headline-grabbing quotes, delivered a comment that carried far more weight than it first appeared. In his calm, understated manner, Larry Bird admitted that last season he caught himself watching Iowa games just as often as Indiana State, his alma mater, and the program that launched his legendary rise decades ago. It wasn't dramatic or overstated, but coming from someone of Bird's stature, it spoke volumes. Bird has never been one to talk just for attention. So when he places Caitlin Clark in the same mental space as the games that helped shape his own basketball identity, people pay attention. What makes his perspective even more meaningful is the type of basketball he respects. Bird doesn't chase headlines or hype. He values fundamentals, court vision, and smart decision-making. And Clark's game reflects all of that. Her deep shooting range, sharp instincts, and ability to control tempo mirror many of the qualities that once defined Bird himself. His comment wasn't casual admiration. It was appreciation rooted in respect for how the game is meant to be played. That quiet acknowledgement carried weight for anyone who understands how rare it is for women's basketball to break into the personal viewing habits of old-school legends. Not long after, Shaquille O'Neal, bold, outspoken, and fiercely loyal, added his own surprising voice to the growing chorus of praise. Shaq's path to becoming a Caitlin Clark supporter didn't happen overnight. Early in her WNBA career, his public support clearly leaned toward Angel Reese, a player he consistently backed. But as Clark continued to dominate with confidence, composure, and game-altering skill, something changed. It wasn't about headlines or social media buzz. It was about what he saw with his own eyes. And when he finally addressed it, the shift was obvious. "Now I'm not Shaq. I'm a fan," he said, momentarily shedding his larger-than-life persona in favor of honesty. He didn't stop at calling her great. He explained why. He spoke about her playmaking, her ability to create opportunities, and how she elevates everyone around her. He pointed out that her choices weren't just flashy, they were smart. Shaq has played alongside legends. He understands the difference between short-term excitement and sustained excellence. And in Clark, he recognized the latter. What made his praise even more impactful was how naturally it came despite his earlier position. There was no hesitation. He acknowledged that television can sometimes flatten a player's presence, but said Clark's game was even more impressive in person. Her movement, shot selection, and leadership all translated seamlessly. Shaq wasn't chasing sound bites. He was genuinely struck by her control, basketball IQ, and maturity on the floor. And he made it clear that what she's doing isn't normal. Recognition from figures like Bird and Shaq isn't just approval. It signals a shift in how the game is being viewed by those who defined it. Their respect doesn't come from emotion. It comes from basketball logic, built over years of studying what separates good players from truly great ones. And as the echoes of legend-level praise surrounded her, one question remained. Why was Caitlin Clark left off Team USA's Olympic roster? Was there more beneath the surface? Let's dig deeper. When criticism fuels a response, Caitlin Clark's quiet rebellion begins. There's a unique kind of silence that comes with being overlooked. Not the silence of empty seats, but the kind that settles in when your name never gets called. Clark had faced pressure before, but missing out on the U.S. Olympic roster carried a different weight. It wasn't just about a tournament. It was the message behind the decision that unsettled fans and critics alike. For many, it made no sense. A player who had reignited interest in women's basketball, filled arenas, and lifted television ratings was suddenly absent from the world's biggest stage. Still, not everyone saw it as a setback. Dwight Howard, whose own NBA career was shaped by triumphs and setbacks, viewed it as a test, one that could become an advantage. "This should push her to work harder," he said plainly, offering no soft reassurance. It wasn't criticism. It was a challenge. Howard wasn't dismissing her frustration. He was pointing to what could come next. He'd seen it before. Players who get overlooked often find a way to respond in unforgettable fashion. He expected nothing less from Caitlin. And maybe that omission gave her something she hadn't had in a long time: space. Without the demands of an Olympic schedule and the global spotlight magnifying every move, she had room to reset. Missing Paris gave her time to sharpen her game quietly. While attention shifted elsewhere, she stayed locked in the gym. Her motivation wasn't performative. It was personal. Fans didn't see every late-night film session or extra rep, but the work was happening steadily, silently, and with purpose. Meanwhile, former NBA guard Jeff Teague refused to stay silent. From his point of view, the WNBA had mishandled a rare opportunity. "They got this wrong," he said, clearly frustrated. Teague was never one to chase attention, but when he spoke, his disappointment was unmistakable. The league hadn't simply failed to maximize Caitlin Clark's impact, it had pushed away the very wave of fans she brought with her.
Arenas were suddenly selling out.
Jerseys were moving fast. Social media engagement was exploding. And yet, instead of embracing her arrival, the response she received felt cold and uninviting. Teague wasn't alone in that belief. Hall of Famer Rick Barry took it a step further. What Clark was facing on the court wasn't just physical, it felt intentional. "It's unacceptable," Barry said, referring to the repeated targeting. This wasn't standard rookie treatment. And coming from someone who played in an era where hard fouls were common, that criticism carried serious weight. What troubled him most wasn't just the contact itself, but the message it sent. If star players aren't protected, what standard does that set for the league? During those early months, every game Clark played felt heavier. Every hit carried intent. Every stare down felt like a signal. And yet, there were no dramatic reactions, no heated soundbites, just focus. She absorbed the pressure quietly and handled it with professionalism. Slowly, the tone began to change. Teammates became more assertive. Opponents took notice, even if they never said it aloud. The silence that once felt dismissive started to shift. It no longer represented doubt. It suggested something brewing. Because this was no longer just about attendance records or viral highlights. Caitlin Clark was becoming a presence the basketball world couldn't dismiss. And as her performance continued to speak for itself, the quiet respect from legends began to sound less like murmurs and more like foresight. So what comes next? Stay locked in. This story is only beginning. The fire they can't ignore. From the outside, Clark's rise may appear effortless, but beneath it lies a growing storm. Pressure, expectation, rivalry, and legacy all converging on one player. And when someone like Michael Jordan speaks, the entire basketball universe listens. His words about Caitlin weren't casual compliments. They carried the weight of a torch being passed. "She's got that fire," Jordan said. "The kind that makes people uncomfortable." He even went as far as saying she was better than anyone on the 2025 U.S. Olympic roster. But Jordan wasn't talking about opponents on a scoreboard. He was pointing to those who see her success as a threat instead of inspiration. The way they go after her, he noted, that's not basketball, it's fear. Coming from a man who spent his career silencing doubters through performance, the message was unmistakable. Ignore the noise. Lock in. Let the game speak. It wasn't encouragement, it was instruction. Jordan knew what it felt like to be dissected, doubted, and turned into a symbol rather than a person. For him to recognize that same fire in Caitlin was confirmation she belonged in rare company. And it's not just legends of the past paying attention. The present has taken notice too. Stephen Curry, often compared to Clark for her deep range and lightning release, sees far more than a shooter. "The shot grabs attention," he said, "but it's her floor game that separates her." Coming from a four-time NBA champion who helped redefine modern basketball, that isn't praise, it's acknowledgement. Two innovators. Two tacticians. Two players who changed the geometry of the game. Curry's admiration became public during the historic NBA versus WNBA three-point shootout where he narrowly edged out Sabrina Ionescu. The idea of Clark stepping into that arena, perhaps even challenging Curry himself, no longer feels unrealistic.
She's been asked.
She's declined for now. But the door remains open, and the basketball world is waiting. All of this fuels a growing question whispered in corners and debated loudly on television panels. Is Caitlin Clark carrying the WNBA? Look at the evidence. Television ratings that once struggled for attention are now filling primetime slots. Arenas that couldn't sell out postseason games are packed for regular season nights. Brands that once ignored the league are racing to sign deals. Charter flights, national advertising campaigns, non-stop highlights. Everything seems to orbit the same center. Caitlin Clark. Magic Johnson, someone who understands what it means to alter the course of basketball history, didn't hesitate. "She's doing for the WNBA what Larry and I did for the NBA," he said. When he and Larry Bird entered the league, they didn't just compete, they rescued it. Now Clark's influence is being measured on that same scale. And even if her peers weren't prepared for this level of attention, they're benefiting from it too. More exposure, more investment, better opportunities. Yet despite all of that, the response from within hasn't always matched the moment. The criticism, the rough play, the distance, it's impossible to ignore. Is it competition? Insecurity? Something deeper? Whatever the reason, it hasn't slowed her down. And if anything, it's only adding fuel to a fire the basketball world can no longer pretend not to see. If anything, the resistance has only pushed her further. For Caitlin Clark, this has never been about popularity. It's about permanence. She isn't campaigning to be the face of women's basketball. She simply keeps becoming it. Every shot she releases, every arena she enters raises the stakes a little higher. Whether the league fully embraces that reality or fights against it, the shift is already underway. The game isn't leading Caitlin Clark anymore. It's trying to catch up. And what comes next could redefine the blueprint entirely. Stay locked in, because the legends are no longer whispering. The weight of the moment. There's an old saying in basketball culture, game recognizes game. It's more than a phrase, it's a standard passed down through generations. And Caitlin Clark has reached that rare space where the greats start paying attention. Not long ago, she was simply a college sensation, torching defenses and dominating highlight reels. But since stepping onto the professional stage, she's become something much larger. This is no longer about promise. It's about influence. And now, some of the most iconic figures in sports history are attaching their voices to hers. Shaquille O'Neal, Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky. Names carved into the foundation of greatness across different sports, all acknowledging the same thing: Caitlin Clark's fire. Jordan, famously cautious with praise, didn't just recognize her talent. He challenged the system surrounding her. His words were brief, sharp, and impossible to ignore. The WNBA, he said, owes Caitlin Clark for what she's already done for the game. Coming from a man who built a global empire on dominance and competitive obsession, that wasn't casual approval. It was a directive. And he went further. He questioned officiating, the repeated physical targeting, and the league's quiet acceptance of it. His message was clear: accountability is overdue. He wasn't requesting change. He was demanding it. Still, not everyone is applauding. A quiet tension continues to grow, subtle, but undeniable. You hear it in post-game comments. You see it in sideline reactions. You sense it in the carefully chosen words of veteran voices within the women's game. Megan Rapinoe, no stranger to pressure or expectation, offered a pointed but measured perspective. Without calling anyone out directly, her message landed clearly. Pressure comes with the territory. Sometimes, you simply have to play through it. It wasn't bitterness. It was context. Every era has its battles. The spotlight always casts shadows. Respect, she implied, is earned night after night. But what happens when someone is already doing exactly that? Because Caitlin Clark isn't asking for sympathy. She isn't dodging tough questions or reacting to hard fouls with drama. She's showing up every game, every city, every headline, breaking rookie records, reigniting franchises, and turning basketball into must-watch television in markets that had long tuned out. She isn't just surviving under pressure. She's thriving in it with a composure many veterans struggle to maintain. At this point, it's no longer just about her stat lines, though they remain staggering. It's about the space she now occupies in conversations that once